Welcome, everyone. We're so grateful you joined us today. Go ahead and drop in the chat as you're coming in and letting us know where you're joining us from. We'd love to see what part of the country you're representing, what organizations you're joining from. So feel free to drop that in the chat. And we are so appreciative for you all joining us today to explore how partnering with community-based organizations and coalitions can enhance our approach to crisis care. Today's session is all about thinking through ways to build connections, collaborate, and build community relevant supports within your crisis response systems. We sincerely appreciate you all joining us. I want to take a moment, though, to ensure that everyone in the audience is ready and comfortable with the technical aspects of our webinar. As you will see, closed captioning is enabled for today's webinar. We also have American Sign Language capabilities enabled in this meeting, and you can activate it by clicking on the interpretation icon on your Zoom navigation bar. If you need tech support for today's webinar, please send a chat message to the host and we will address it for you. Lastly, if you have questions during the presentation, please enter them into the Q&A area and the questions will be sent directly to our presenters, as well as our moderators. Next slide. Before we get into the content, I would like to note that the views expressed in written conference materials or publications and by our speakers and moderators do not necessarily reflect the official policies of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services or the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, nor does the mention of trade names, commercial practices, or organizations imply endorsements by the U.S. government. Next slide. Today's webinar is hosted by SAMHSA's 988 Crisis Systems Response Training and Technical Assistance Center, which we affectionately call the TTAC for short. SAMHSA has selected Alterum to provide training and technical assistance support to states, territories, tribal organizations, and community partners across the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline and Crisis Continuum of Care, along with our partners at W2 Consulting Corporation and Change Matrix LLC, who have extensive experience with crisis services and technical assistance. The TTAC was formed to support the continued growth of the 988 Lifeline and build a more robust crisis care system. The goal of our TTAC is to support a crisis care system that is integrated, sustainable, and aligned with evidence-based and evidence-informed practices. In addition to webinars such as this one, our TTAC provides one-on-one technical assistance, which is guided support for planning, implementing, and even conducting quality improvement and evaluation on any aspect of your crisis system from state to program level. If you're feeling stuck or facing any obstacles with your crisis system and your crisis services, please submit a technical assistance request to the TTAC. Even if you don't know what to ask for, we can help you understand the problem and work through solutioning by providing resources, connecting you with subject matter experts, as well as other states and programs that might have insights on solutions. And we provide you with guidance tailored to your specific needs and context. We'll share a link to our technical assistance services in the chat, and we'll also keep an eye out for your requests and questions as they come in. We've also launched our 2026. The application window for the Policy Academy is now open, and we invite you to apply and join us at a 2-day convening in March. Travel and lodging will be covered to support you and your teams with building and refining your crisis systems. We will share more information about the Policy Academy at the end of today's presentation and encourage you to stay on today and learn more. For now, we're going to drop a link, though, into the chat for the application. Next slide. We do want to acknowledge our SAMHSA partners for their support in the 988 Crisis Systems Response Training and Technical Assistance Center. First, thank you to Dr. John Palmieri, the Acting Director of the 988 Behavioral Health Crisis Coordinating Office. Dr. Palmieri brings expertise in crisis response, suicide prevention, care integration, and more. Next slide. I also want to acknowledge Jill Mays, the Division Director of Crisis System Transformation. Jill leads evolutionary and collaborative work of Pillars 2 and 3, Someone to Respond and a Safe Place for Help of the 988 Behavioral Health Crisis Continuum. Next slide. And we also want to acknowledge Dr. Laura House, who leads external engagement and capacity building for the 988 and Behavioral Health Crisis Continuum. Dr. House's work helps strengthen partnerships and build capacity across the crisis continuum. Next slide. So here's our learning objectives for today. We're going to talk about what are the key roles of community-based organizations within each pillar of the crisis care continuum. And we'll also describe some effective strategies for developing and sustaining collaborative partnerships with community-based organizations. And then we'll give you some practical approaches for designing and evaluating efforts with community partners. Next slide. We have a packed agenda today. We're coming up on the end of introductions, but we'll talk about the roles of CBOs. We'll talk about the 5 pillars of building community partnerships. And then we'll also give you a practical example of utilizing the community readiness model. And again, we'll have some information exchange, Q&A at the end. We encourage you to stick around, and we'll also have office hours towards the end of the session. Next slide. I am pleased to introduce our first guest speaker, Cindy Rivera. Cindy is a project director at Change Matrix, specializing in early childhood and mental health across the lifespan. With over 20 years of nonprofit experience working at the community level to implement programs to meet identified needs. She's worked across communities from Tennessee to America Samoa on issues ranging from community volunteerism to chronic disease prevention. Cindy believes when community members are seen as experts, organizations may begin to support innovative solutions to complex challenges. We're so excited to have Cindy here today. Next slide. Our next guest speaker is Mr. Tracy Johnson. Mr. Johnson has 36 years of experience working closely with nonprofits, small businesses, local agencies, and communities, helping them with community organizing, environmental strategy, strategic planning, substance abuse prevention, coalition building, and person-centered training, humanities, and effective primary prevention programming. He's led several major projects for federal, county, state agencies, boards, and communities on effective behavioral health strategies and substance use prevention with extensive knowledge of SAMHSA's strategic framework, comprehensive approach to 6 key prevention strategies. We're so happy to have you, Mr. Johnson. Next slide. And then we also want to welcome Mr. Andy Hunt. Andy Hunt is an enrolled member of the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina and earned his Master of Social Work from Portland State University. Throughout his career, Andy was focused on being an agent of change and an advocate for American Indian and Alaska Native people. As an independent consultant, Andy draws on 3 decades of government and community-based experience to help clients meet their goals. Welcome, and we're so happy to have you, Andy. Next slide.
Are you passing it over to me, Jess?
I am passing it over to you, Cindy, to talk about the roles of CBOs.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmine. It is so wonderful to be here talking about one of my absolute favorite things, and that's community-based organizations. And the reason why I love community-based organizations is they are where the system is not always at, right? They're in every community. There are thousands of them throughout the United States, territories, tribes, working in a way that is in relationship with communities in order to best serve their needs and meet their challenges. So that's why they are so important as we think about our crisis system, to think about how we can partner with these integral organizations within our communities that are doing the work that needs to be done, right? And so the first thing I want to think about is how the roles that our CBOs can play. First off, they're trust builders, right? They are the front porch of our communities. So oftentimes, CBOs have been in communities for decades, and people know the people who work there, the ED, the directors, maybe the board of directors. They're people that have been rooted in the community and there's trust in them. Another thing I think is important to think about is we as crisis system builders and supporters, we always want to elevate voices of people with lived experience. And CBOs naturally do that. They're already working with community members that are telling their stories. And for us as crisis system providers, and builders, we can partner alongside community based organizations to learn, right? We put our learning hats on and get proximate, get close to our community through conversations with individuals who have had lived experience and may be part of a community-based organization. Um, Community-based organizations may be serving many functions within a community. Maybe they're working on housing, or they're doing youth prevention services, or providing food assistance, right? They can provide all these services, but what we know there is people are gathered, and oftentimes they've had diverse experiences, and it's a place where we can partner to learn more about their experiences, specifically around the crisis system. And our CBOs are awareness raisers, right? Because they need to get their own message out. So they are, back, I started my career working for a CBO and before social media and before email campaigns, and we would go hit the streets, right? We were like out in our community, canvassing, talking to people, giving them flyers, telling them about the services that are available to them, and oftentimes helping to recruit for our partner organizations, or giving out a little bit of extra information, because the people who work for CBOs and volunteer are often in many places at once, delivering many types of messages. They're natural supports to raise awareness. And finally, they are the leaders, right? I was just recently at an event, and many of our CBOs and their advisory committees were there, and they're the leaders. They're the ones shaping what our community looks like, what is deemed important in our communities, and because of that, they're able to help us ensure that our services are responsive. So next we're going to talk about, on the next slide, is specific to 988. We love our 3 pillars, and there are specific roles that community-based organizations can play within each of the 3 pillars, right? So thinking about someone to contact, our crisis lines, 988 call centers, warm lines. So what are the roles that community-based organizations can do within our crisis lines? Well, they can always be the ones that are helping us send the message of, we're here and this is what happens when you call 988. More and more, I'm hearing a little bit about people's reticence to call 988 because they're not sure what's going to happen, right? And so this is where these trusted individuals and organizations can have a conversation. because we've informed them. 988 isn't scary. You're going to reach someone or text someone or chat with someone that really can understand and meet the person where they're at. And we can help them with the messaging around what 988 is, what people can expect, and what and how to partner with us, right? So they're just such trusted messengers. So as we really try and fight the stigma around calling 988 or reaching out for help, our CBOs are really our communicators, right? They can help us communicate in a way that sometimes as system builders and as call centers, we can't do. We're doing something else, right? But we have people that are trusted and working in community to help support this message. And then as we move into our next slide, which is someone to respond, right? We think about, well, how can we have CBOs? One of the things I think about, and I've seen actual examples of this, is CBOs training call centers, mobile response on their community. So what's important to their community, right? They can provide community specific trainings that maybe there's something special about a community. One of the I work a lot in military communities as an active duty spouse. And so when I'm working on, for Benning, I can work with crisis response and tell them this is some things that might be important to know about the military, right? So there's all these specific communities that CBOs touch, and they can actually train our mobile response in that. They can also be really, really integral in follow-up and aftercare, right? Oftentimes, a part of follow-up might be connections to community supports, or maybe someone else has broader issues that they need support with. CBOs create those linkages. They are really well poised to serve in this aftercare and follow-up. And finally, they're a place of community, right? It's where people can go for peer support, to be with others that maybe have experienced the same thing, or volunteer. So there's these opportunities that CBOs, depending on where you're at and what the CBO does, could do around supporting individuals post-crisis. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about our third pillar, which is a safe place to go, a safe place for help. And these are more our crisis stabilization. So oftentimes CBOs will offer youth-centered spaces. So maybe someone doesn't want to have services in their home. CBOs might have a room where they could go and have some services there. Sometimes there are other non-traditional supports that are important for community members. It could include spiritual healing or spiritual care or healing circles, and that can all be done in partnership with community-based organizations. And then again, like I spoke about mobile response, also in crisis stabilization, the bridging to ongoing supports. And, this relationship between community-based organizations and the crisis system is really important. I saw a phenomenal example of this partnership just this week. A community-based organization sponsored a youth mental health and suicide awareness conference. And our local community stabilization center was at the conference. And not only were they tabling and making sure that they had their message out to community members that they would not normally have access to. So really, really good example, but they were also providing support if someone was activated due to one of the sessions or one of the speakers, because we were talking about some heavy things. So the Community Stabilization Center was offering pro bono some support just in case. And that was really important because that CBO did not have the capacity to provide that support. So therein lies was a partnership that both amplified the message of 988 and the crisis system and also supported the CBO, and it really came together really well. So look at those creative ways to work alongside your community-based organizations and what they're doing, because they really do meet their community where they're at and are really very important in making sure our system is responsive. So we're going to hear more about how to do that with our next speaker, Tracy Johnson. So at this point, I want to pass it over to you to talk more about the 5 pillars.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate it, and a wonderful message there. Hello, everyone. I am Tracy Johnson, as mentioned before. I am excited to talk about partnering with community-based organizations in a way that, from my years of experience in working with a nonprofit for 18 years in Illinois, but also beginning to work with and providing training and technical assistance to nonprofits as well. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that I found over my 30 plus years of working with community-based organizations, particularly in substance misuse, suicide prevention, and those areas, I've learned that I found in the world, according to Tracy, what I call the 5 Ps or 5 pillars of crisis systems engaging with community-based organizations. So I come here today, normally what I'm giving you is definitely more than the allotted time provided, but I'll give you a snapshot of this so you can maybe take some real key points home. And so we want to talk about building strong organizations that really is going to impact 988 one pillar at a time, but collectively. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about the 5, I call them the 5 pillars or 5 Ps, I want to really talk to you about describing effective strategies for crisis systems and developing sustaining collaborative partnerships. Next slide, please. And so the background on this is that, I really, in my work and doing this work around, working in 25 states and working in community-based levels, urban, Native American, Latino communities around the country, focusing on partnering with community-based organizations and entities has been my lifeblood. And I think when I talk about these 5 Ps, they're applicable for any organization. And those of you who are 988 organizations or working with community-based organizations, this, I think, could be helpful to you. It's a format to help organize and structure sustainable outcomes and what I call the DNA for success. Next slide, please. And so today I'm going to give a few polls. So just take a look at this poll, and on a scale of 1 to 5, I want you to talk about how clearly is your organization, is your crisis system mission communicated to community-based organizations in your community. How clearly is your crisis system mission really communicated? Just pick between 1 and 5, 1 being not clear, 3 being somewhat, and 5 being extremely clear. Fill out that poll, and we'll move right on as well. Next slide, please. Can't wait to hear the results. So as you all do that, I also want to make sure that I have these 5 pillars, and I want you to put in the chat, if you can, what do you think are the 5 pillars that I'm going to talk about? So just put in the chat the 5 Ps. What would be the 5 pillars for what I'm going to choose? Just put in the chat, and let's see how close you come to what I have chosen around the 5 Ps. Put it in the chat for me. I know you all thought you were just going to sit back and listen, but I want you to engage yourself in this effective work, because as 988 organizations or community-based organizations working on crisis, this is very important, and engagement is so critical if we're going to have a substantive change and substantive impact. Can you hit that button on that next slide? Let's see which one let's see what the first pillar or the first P is. Passion. So if you had passion or somewhere near that, passion is critical. Next slide, please. Let's talk about passion. And that passion pillar is like one of the five that will be able to sustain and hold up a good organization or coalition. And I'll tell you why. Next slide, please. And because when I think about passion, it's really about having that intense emotion, that real sense of overpowering emotions such as joy, love, anger, hatred, and even a sense of belonging and community. Passion is so critical. Next slide. I call it one of the five P's. Why? Because there's certain key, what I call passion points that really make passion important in organizations and coalitions. The first point is that passion really energizes crisis systems by motivating people. I mean, you all would not be in this business. It's not for the pay. Clearly, it's for that passion of motivating folks to be dedicated and resilient. And then secondly, that passion commitment to is really fosters resilience, ensures that individuals can really continue working towards solutions. And if you look at the pillar in front of you, the keys that come out of that passion pillar are you seeing there creativity, dedication, positive energy. If there's passion, there's motivation. Next slide, please. This And so if we're going to protect that passion in our organization and the work that you do that's so deep, there's a way of what we have to protect it. How do you protect it? So you have to have supportive environments. You have to have experience and satisfaction of needs. And more importantly, you have to have that growth and wellness. But also to keep it away, you have to throw out the environment where there's negativity. I know my children talk about, we don't want that negative energy, Dad, keeping that away from you. But then also to keep it away, it's that you have an experience of need, and what it can bring is some malfunctioning and ill-being. So we want to keep that anti-passion out of the work that we do. We want to build that passion up. Next slide, please. And so take a quick minute and I want you to write in the chat, as an individual, name something that you are passionate about. Name something. It don't have to be work related. Just name something that you are passionate about. Just one word. What are you passionate about? All right. Let them keep coming. Okay, next slide, please. Keep writing. So if you need to increase that passion in your work, in your organization, your coalition, you have to clarify what's the mission and the goals of the organization and what you're trying on the project. You have to really celebrate the successes of being in the crisis system that you've helped individuals. You have to foster positive culture. You have to connect with the community, and you also need to offer opportunities for growth. If you're going to build passion and maintain passion and increase passion, it is these five things that I've found in working with organizations around the country that have really been successful in bringing that passion pillar to life. Next slide, please. So you've heard about one. So you guys kind of get the pattern where I'm going, right, in my short time. So let's see what you chose for the second pillar or P for working with crisis systems. Next slide, please. Dun, 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 dun. It's presence. Presence, you all. Next slide. What do we mean by presence, Tracy? That it is that presence pillar. Next slide, please. It is that presence pillar that asks the question, when your community, when it's a time for a crisis comes, and before it does come, when your community is in need, you have to ask the question, where are you? And so that's really critical in understanding that dynamic. Where are you in terms of the presence in your community? Next slide, please. And so when we talk about that, we talk about having that sense of close proximity to those in need. So when I found working in urban communities and communities of different higher risks, it really has a need to know, why are you here if you're not here before I needed you? Now you're here when I need you. You have to have a presence in your community where you're trying to impact. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about that presence pillar, there's certain presence goals that I wanted to convey to you as it relates to crisis services. That if you are visible, and you have that presence in the community, it provides, in a sense, an anchor point for what? Collaboration and collective action. But also, what does it do if you have a presence? If you have a presence in your community, that community power is rooted in consistent and meaningful presence. They see you, they know you're here, and not just waiting on a crisis, but you're there as supportive members of that community because you build partners. A good presence pillar builds partners, advocates, understands the needs of their community in a much more of a broader sense. But most important, that last part of that bullet there, that you build trust and credibility. And I think Cindy had talked about it earlier. You build trust and credibility in your community by having that presence. Next slide, please. So here's another poll, you all. What is or are your most active means of community presence? As if you are a nonprofit organization or a crisis organization, what are your most active means of community presence? Is it social media? They give you local events, faith-based services. What is your most active mean? Fill out that chat, and I am anxious to hear what you all going to say in terms of the results for this particular poll. Next slide, please. So when we talk about increasing that community presence, it's really about developing a clear, consistent message, right? It's about really using, and I noticed on the polling, a lot of you have been using social media and other digital platforms. It is important. When I was running a nonprofit in the late 80s and early 90s, we didn't have social media, as Cindy said as well. But it is so important. But you also have to partner with community-based organizations and not wait for the crisis to happen, but to partner with them. You can invite and host webinars and events and workshops for community-based organizations and coalitions, but you also, no matter what, you can still utilize traditional media to engage and communicate. And it's showing in the polls that local events is critical. And thank you all for doing that. That is a way to show your presence. Next slide, please. So we've talked about passion. We've talked about presence. And so what are the other 5 P's? Let's see what the next 5 P is. Next slide, please. Dun, 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 dun. It's having a power base. Next slide, please. What do you mean, Tracy, by having that power base? It is that power base, and I show this particular picture because the power base sustains everything. It is the thing that holds up the organization's ability to really function as a crisis system organization in the community. Next slide, please. So when we talk about having that power base, simply put, I talk about having resources and people that really support you and can draw upon what you're doing to really impact that. If you have that power base, in so many words, it will be something that can be tangible or intangible, but it really supports you even when you're not looking or you're not hearing. That power base or people or individuals or organizations, if you are in a crisis, if you want CBOs to support crisis systems, when there is a non-crisis issue, you should show up when it has nothing to do with your system at this point. You have to be a part of that power base so they can be your power base when the time is needed. Next slide, please. So there's a third poll, you all. So here's that poll. How strong is your crisis services network of influence power-based folks or partners, leaders, interest holders, influencers, your power base? How strong is your crisis service network of influence? Next, fill that out. I'm anxious to see how you all respond to that as well. Next slide, please. So when we talk about that power base, I am talking clearly about building that power-based system that really ensures that people have the capacity, the resources, the community backing. That's where you strengthen your power base. for crisis systems, if you have one of the best solid power-based strengths, then you don't have to worry about when you are in need of bringing people to the table during crisis. You have been in that community because they know that you are there. You have a presence, you have a passion, and now you've built that power base, the individuals to support you. And a power base can really provide things, not just individual folks, but they can provide financial resources. They can provide an expert knowledge base of individuals. And they can be a political capital when things need to get done. If you have that power base and you are a crisis system, that power base who knows that you are there for them will speak on their behalf and make things happen. And then also that cultural capital, that individual way of engaging multiple folks. Everybody knows that you are part of the community. So that's a wonderful thing. Next slide, please. So if we're going to increase that power, if you need to increase that power base, then you've got to engage community leaders. At the end of the day, you've got to be out there shaking hands and connecting with people when it's not needed, when a crisis is not in order. You need to develop partnerships with groups of interest. You got to build a community presence. I'll let that settle for a minute. You have to build a community presence. You have to mobilize your crisis system resources as you have them. You have to utilize technology and social media, and you have to build what? A broad network of individuals to increase that power base. Because at the end of the day, they will amplify for you the work that you do, and people will be there supporting you when your crisis and opportunity is needed. That power base is so critical that it's important to that. As Jasmine said, a strong power base could also help strengthen referral pathways. Yes, having that power base, and I have a whole section on this, but I don't have time, but it's so important. Next slide, please. So you've heard about passion. That's important, that's integral, that's needed. You've heard about having that presence. That's really critical in your community as if you want to work in this system, but you also have to have the power base. Let's see what the next one is. Next slide, please. It's prestige. I know you're like, well, Tracy, what are you talking about here? Let's go to the next slide and see what I'm talking about. So when I talk about prestige, when you look at this pillar here, you see how the art is decorated on there. It has a sense of real fine artistry on there. And so when I talk about prestige, I talk about that pillar that really says these folks are for real and they do what they say they're going to do. Next slide, please. And what does that mean? When I talk about prestige, it refers to that respect, that admiration, that high self-esteem that is accorded to a system or an organization, because you say what you're going to do, you do what you're going to say, you achieve things, you achieve the ability, and your reputation really builds upon this. Prestige is often seen as a measure of status and influence, but what? It's also associated, as it says there, with positive qualities such as expertise, skill, or leadership. So when you want to bring that, when you want to have that prestige, you have the best, the brightest, and the most engaged, and folks have respect for you. In a context of a crisis system, you all, in my belief, is that prestige can be viewed as a form of what? Social capital that allows the crisis services provider to be recognized and really respected as a credible voice for the community. If you're going to have that prestige, if you have that pillar prestige, you're going to be touted in your area because you bring the level of prestige. Next slide, please. So when I think of prestige, I think of things like fine dining, fine places to go, fine restaurants and hotels to stay in. That's another level of thought around prestige. Next slide, please. But we also mean these as well when we talk about prestige in a crisis system, is that having prestige in the community can really help strengthen, if you will, the crisis system's legitimacy. I'll put an underline under legitimacy. Why? Because it builds the ability for the other pillars that we just talked about. But it also empowers the community that you serve. And the second piece is that prestige really helps to establish you as a crisis service responder, as what? A credible and respected voice within the community. If you're gonna, it can also lead to increased support and capacity building. I find it when I talk about the pillars of any, when I talk about this particular pillar, I find it to be a very strong, powerful influence in the community in which you are. If you have that pillar prestige, that prestige of pillar, then you will have influence. You will attract resources, and you will have what I call a strong, respected voice in the work that you do. So, prestige pillar. Next slide, please. And so, if you need to increase your prestige, you have to first and foremost, you got to say what you're going to do and do what you're going to say. You got to deliver on your expectations and your promises. You got to really engage and support and participate in really community activities that have nothing to do with you at this point, but you're there and people can see you. They see who you are. You have to foster collaborations, not collaborations, not beating each other up, but foster collaborations. That is critical. And ultimately, if you want to increase that prestige, you got to be transparent and you got to develop strong partnerships and relationships. This is really a crisis system that is effective and increasing prestige and using the 5 pillars. It's all about relationships, you all. It's all about relationships. Next slide, please. And so we've done 4 distinct pillars, you all. We've done passion, we've done presence, we've done power base, we've done prestige. Let's see, Tracy, what you have chosen as that final 5th pillar that you've seen around organizations. Next slide, please. Ironically, it is the process. It is the number one thing to me. It's why it sits in the middle as the most important thing that builds an effective crisis system. And it connects with community and community-based organizations and community-based organizations needing the process as well. Next slide, please. And when I talk about process pillar, next slide, it's really about process, and crisis. You need to have a functional, strong, effective process that the community can connect with. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have those other 4 pillars and if you don't have a process and you have those other 4 pillars, then it has no good to you in your community. Next slide, please. And so the process is a series of actions that produce something that leads to what I call the ultimate way of doing things. Next slide, please. And so when we talk about that whole piece about process, you talk about really perfecting on what you do, how you do it with precision, with the best instance of engaging communities. You're building trust with community-based organizations. You're improving accountability. You're increasing your efficiency. And what you're doing is demonstrating impact. But also what you're doing is that if you have the process in place, it leads to better outcomes. What I mean by outcomes, I mean changes in knowledge, changes in attitudes, or changes in behavior. Because at the end of the day, you want your partners in your community to really have better outcomes, to help create a really effective crisis system. So if you have a process pillar in place, it will show your impact and you can communicate that to the community. It will what? There's that word again. It will build trust through consistency. And there, most importantly, it'll improve accountability. Next slide, please. And so when I talk about process, I talk about the internal process of an organization, of your crisis organization, of your community-based organization. If you don't have a values, vision, mission, strategic process, crisis system, how to operate well, functioning as a well-oiled machine internally, you have to have that as part of the process. But then what do you do outside of the organization to be really effective in the community, where you see community-based outcomes from operating the way you had it originally had planned for it to operate. You have to have two key pieces: internal, what I call organizational; external is what I call programmatically. Next slide, please. So check this out, y'all. Last poll. Which of the five P's does your organization system really need to focus on right now? Is it passion? Is it presence? Is it prestige? Is it power base? Is it process? Give me your thoughts on that and what you think about your crisis system in your community. Next slide, please. So when we talk about increasing the process pillar, I said it before, it's really knowing what your goals, what I really go deeper than that. What's your values? What's your vision? What's your mission? What's your goals? What's your objective? You have to develop clear protocols and processes in place. You have to encourage active participation, you all. You have to foster, look at that, not collaboration, but collaboration. You have to tear down. I know not in your communities, this doesn't happen. There's strong collaboration. But then in some communities, they do more collaborating, beating each other up than they are collaborating. Then you also have to measure what you're doing so you can communicate to your community. And then you have to use the latest technologies and the latest tools and technology to really connect with your community and have those processes in place. And then ultimately, what we don't like to do is that we have to seek feedback and input. Clearly an important part of the work that the process pillar talks about. And it looks like you all are showing that process is where your system need to focus on right now. Thank you all for sharing with the presence in the background. Next slide, please. So you've heard it: passion, power base, process, presence, and prestige. Next slide, please. So now tell me, what is your strongest pillar? Thinking about your crisis service organization, and if you had to choose a strong pillar of the five that I've been able to produce to you, which one is the strongest one for you? Just put in the chat. Which one is your strongest one? Just write in the chat. Next slide, please. Because I want you to understand this dynamic, and that at the end of the day, your strong pillar is just that, but it cannot hold the whole organization. You have got to create the other pillars as well. Next slide, please. So when we talk about building those 5 Ps, it's really about what Dr. Doherty and Dr. Perkins and them did in their study back in 2003. The building block of crisis systems working with community-based organizations. First and foremost, you got to build relationships. Secondly, once you build relationships, folks will become dedicated. So you have to show dedication. But thirdly, the most important thing to me is that trust begins to seep in and becomes a part of that process. And then people begin to share knowledge. And the leadership begins to uphold itself and become more accountable. Next slide, please. And so I leave you with this one thing, is that as I go see my doctor every day for my work, my health, he or she tells me you need to see the phlebotomist, you need to go to the x-ray technician, you need to go get on that treadmill and go up that treadmill and breathing heavy and all the stuff that goes along with it. And then he finally sits down with me after he has that information. And then he asks, Tracy, tell me a little bit about you. And he gets that sort of subjective information, qualitative information from Tracy. So I use this example because as crisis systems, I implore you all to become the physicians of your community. I ask for you to do that. Collaborate, not collaborate. Use the 5 pillars because you must become the physicians of your community. Next slide, please. And so one more slide, please. Keep hitting them until they all come up. I implore you the opportunity to think about the 5 pillars in such a quick fashion that I did. And I appreciate your opportunity of listening to Martha and Otha Johnson's youngest son, Tracy Johnson, in the work that we do in our communities. And I salute you all for the work in crisis systems around this country. Thank you. And I now turn it over to Sophie.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Tracy. And
Mhm.
I will pass it to Andy, who will be talking about the community readiness model, giving us the practical strategies.
All right. Hi. Thanks, Tracy. That was great. Hopefully what I'm gonna talk about will you guys will be able to tie that into what Tracy was talking about. So what I am going to present on is I'm going to give you a basic overview of the community readiness model, which some of you may be familiar with. And I'm going to talk with you not as an expert in the community readiness model, um, per se, but I have experience with this as a SAMHSA project officer. This was a part of many of the grants that we used to have people do community readiness assessment, and often they would use this model based on the work of Barbara Plested and Pam Jumper Thurman. So next slide. This model was developed at Colorado State University about 25 years ago, and it has been used by a lot of different communities for a lot of different topics. As I said, it has been used by many different SAMHSA grant programs over the years. I'm not, since I've been retired for a few years, I'm not sure if that's still part of some of the SAMHSA grants. But this model has been used for a variety of topics. It's been used in suicide prevention. It's been used in children's mental health. It's been used in things like diabetes, um, uh, bicycle safety, you name it. Any kind of a health related issue that a program is wants to have impact on. There's a process. This is a model to gauge your community's readiness um, to engage in the work. So it is a stage-based framework. So there is different stages they have for the community readiness. It's done by collecting surveys and key informant interviews, talking about the need, obstacles, and strengths related to the issue. The data that's collected from this helps to develop strategies for community engagement based on the stage of readiness. So you basically want to say that it's trying to help you aim your work at the place where people are ready to do it, so that you're not kind of moving ahead of the community and spinning your wheels. It is a participatory process, so we really want to see the community, which however you define it, that they are involved, that they're some people talk about community buy-in, and I really think that it should be community ownership. And there's a slight difference in that. And the community owns it, they kind of drive it, they understand it, they're an equal part in the system and creating that process. So a lot of the stuff that was just talked about with process can be related to the community readiness model. So let's go to the next slide. The process for the community readiness assessment for this model is, first you want to define your community. So what community are you talking about that you want to reach, specific to your what you're trying to do. So is it reaching out to a community that is, let's say, the law enforcement community? Is it a community based on geography? So maybe there's a part of town or part of your county that's maybe a rural area, and there's a specific community there. If you're in a tribal community, maybe that's a community, maybe it's a faith-based community. So really kind of figuring out what community do you want to focus on for this. Then once you've done that, you conduct key respondent interviews. There's a scoring process that later on you'll see a link to all of the tools to figure out how to do this. This is free. Develop strategies and then you conduct workshops based on the level of readiness. And then hopefully that leads to community change. And I think in this case, the community change is really the adoption of 988 and a fully functioning process of referrals and people accepting services, providing services, a well-functioning crisis system. So next slide. So why is this model used for an engagement strategy? So the one thing, as I mentioned earlier, is that it helps you to avoid ineffective strategies by focusing on the strategies that might be most successful based on the level of readiness. So as I said, you don't want to be doing things where you're kind of ahead of where the community is in terms of their readiness to engage and to take action. It's an efficient and expensive, easy to use tool. Like I said, at the end, you'll see the link for that. I think it's going to be in the chat as well, so you can link on it right now at some point during this presentation or afterwards. It's a pretty easy tool to follow. It promotes community recognition and ownership, again, so you're kind of getting out there, community-based organizations, sort of, as I say, everyday people, not just us professionals, but people who are out there who are just living their life, trying to do their own thing in their world. They, at some point they might be in crisis, so they should have some sense of ownership and knowing what the crisis system is about. And that ownership just really ensures that you're going to, kind of make sure this is a good fit. And then here in the context of this presentation, we're going to say the issue is your crisis system. So next slide. This is the framework that's used in the community readiness model. It's measuring attitudes, knowledge, efforts, and activities and resources of both community members and leadership. And once you do that through the key informant interviews, surveys, then you have a score that tells you your readiness for change. And then that helps you to develop effective strategies for engagement based on the community's readiness. Next slide. There are 9 levels or 9 stages of community readiness that are identified in this model, going anywhere from number 1, no awareness, all the way to number 9, the highest level where the community is really ownership is fully achieved. So kind of think about where you are sort of on this wheel. You might have a guess as to where people are, where your community is, but this tool is going to provide you a process for collecting data around that. So next slide. Those are the 9 stages. There are 6 dimensions for assessing the community readiness. There's the community efforts, community knowledge of efforts, leadership, community climate, community knowledge about the issue, and resources related to the issue. So these are the dimensions. I guess they didn't call it pillars. Tracy calls it pillars. But these are slightly different dimensions. So some of the questions you can see there that you might want to ask that get at these different dimensions. Next slide. So when you're engaging in this process, who should be surveyed when the model is being applied? You can see there's a list of pretty much all the people, all the organizations, all the systems. And I think that last one to me is the most important, the hard to reach community members. A lot of times when you're doing something with the community, you've got the same 5 or 10 people that show up for every meeting. They're active, they're passionate, they're involved, they're always there. But there's a lot of people in the community that probably are not as active that you really want to get at them to find out what they know, what they think, and what their readiness is. Next slide. So after you've done the assessment, then hopefully you will be initiating a participatory planning process. That's a tongue twister. And then you're involving the community around, okay, how do we take action based on what we've learned from this community readiness? And the model says that really to move ahead, the readiness in each of the dimensions must be about the same level. So if you've got, leadership is like super ready, really ready to go, but then there's another part of the community that is at the level of no awareness at all, it's going to be hard to move forward until you kind of bring up the level of readiness. So it's more or less equal on each of the levels. So once you've done that, you adjust your strategies and tactics. You keep working, you can kind of do a reassessment after a couple of years or maybe 6 months, a year, year and a half, see if you've had any impact in moving the needle in the community readiness. And next slide. And I apologize to the ASL interpreters if I'm talking too quick. I'm trying to get through my slides. This is the last one. So I really wanted to talk about a very quick example of a tribal program in the Northwest that used the community readiness model after they were kind of spinning their wheels. So it was a new program for children's mental health. It was one of my grants that children's mental health grant at SAMHSA. So the tribe named the program in their grant application using language from their own tribal language. That's how they named it. So they were trying to reach out, putting community flyers and all these things with the name that they had chosen in their language. This was a tribe that didn't have a lot of fluency with the language, their traditional language. So what they found out is people weren't coming in. There was getting no referrals. All of this outreach effort they were doing about the name of the program really wasn't working. So they did a community readiness assessment, and they kind of found out that there was people weren't ready to receive this message because they were confused about what the program was. A lot of people thought it was some sort of language class or a cultural activity group when it was really a new mental health program. So that kind of helped them reassess how ready people were to even hear the message. They revised their flyers, and then they really determined that not so much flyers and posters, but really the word of mouth and helping to get the word out amongst the tribal members was really the key. And as a result of that, eventually the referrals started coming in because people started making connections with each other. Trusted community members started spreading the word about this new program that was providing services to children. So next slide, I believe, is my resources. So the Community Readiness for Change, that first one from 2014, that's the sort of the handbook that will give you, walk you through the whole process. There's a SAMHSA published manual for Native communities. You can find that. Kentucky University also has a similar link. And then there's a research article there by Pam Thurman and Barbara Blested with the last one. So that was a very quick thumbnail overview of community readiness model. So hopefully you find that useful. Feel free to go to the links, and yeah, that's it. I'll pass it on to the next person. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andy. And thank you to Tracy as well as Cindy. We really appreciate you bringing your expertise to the space and sharing ways that we could be partnering with community-based organizations and providing practical strategies and how to do so. I will echo the presenters. We did pack a lot of content in a short time frame, but the good news is if you want to go deeper on any of these, you can reach out to the TTAC. I popped the link in the chat a few times. Reach out to us. We can connect you with the subject matter experts as well as some team members here at the TTAC that could help you think through these things. So even, if you don't know, again, if you don't know what the question is, you can help you even think through what your needs are. So feel free to reach out to us if you want to go deeper on this or if there's anything else related to your crisis services that you might need support with. But I do want to conclude here just thinking about the importance of community partnership. It's essential for creating a crisis response system that is relevant, effective, and sustainable. Getting that community ownership, getting that presence, and that power base is really important to making sure that people know you exist in your community and that you're a trusted source when a time of crisis arises. Community-based organizations can offer supports across the crisis continuum. Again, thank you to Cindy for giving us really clear examples of how that could be. And then also thinking through strong systems and practical strategies and keeping a collaborative mindset really create that foundation for trust building, ongoing participation, and that shared ownership of crisis services within the community.